Boker Tov. Welcome to our Aliyah Day. I am Rabbi Mordecai Griffin, the rabbi of Sar Shalom Synagogue here in Saginaw, Texas, the founder of Lapid Judaism, and your host, I suppose, for the Aliyah Day here daily as we study the Parashah. And so I'm glad to be with you. If this happens to be your first time joining us, then welcome, and welcome to all of our friends, all of our family watching from across the fruited plain, all across the United States, and even across the world, as it were. We are in Parashah Pinchas and studying here on page 885 of the Art Scroll Chumash, if you happen to have the Art Scroll Chumash. If you do not have the Art Scroll Chumash, then we recommend purchasing that. We are in chapter 26 of the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, and our third Aliyah begins in the 52nd verse of chapter 26. So we're going to conclude here with the counting and the counting of the Levites, and then get into the laws, or the beginning anyway, the laws of inheritance. So let's read this passage, and then we will bring our commentary to bear, and as we always do, find what nuggets of truth and growth that Hashem should want to show us today. So let's see. We begin by reading here. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "To these shall the land be divided as an inheritance, according to the number of names. For the numerous ones you shall increase in inheritance, and for the fewer one you shall lessen its inheritance. Each one according to his count shall his inheritance be given. Only by lot shall the land be divided, according to the names of their fathers' tribes shall they inherit it. According to the lot shall one's inheritance be divided between the numerous and the few. These are the countings of the Levites, according to their according to their families: of Gershon, the Gershonite family; of Kohath, the Kohathite family; of Merari, the Merarite family. These are the Levite families: the Lebanite family, the Hebronite family, the Machalite family, the Mushite family, the Kohathite family, and Kohath begat Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. And she bore to Amram, Aaron, Moshe, and their sister Miriam. Can you imagine those three children? All of our children are precious, but she just happened, this lady, Jochebed, this fine Jewess, was blessed to give birth to the Kohen Gadol, the first Redeemer, and a beautiful prophetess. It's amazing. Can you imagine what the Arab Shabbat table must have been like? So, to Aaron were born Nadab and Abihu, Eliezer, and Ithamar. Nadab and Abihu died when they brought an alien fire before Adonai. Their counts were 23,000, every male from 1 month of age and above. For they did not count themselves among the children of Israel, for an inheritance was not given them among the children of Israel. Verse 63. These are the ones counted by Moses and Eleazar the Kohen, who counted the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan near Jericho. And of these, there was no man of those counted by Moses and Aaron the Kohen, who counted the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For Adonai had said of them, they will surely die in the wilderness, and not a man was left of them, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Yehoshua, son of Nun. I've said this before, but in case you haven't heard it, the name of Joshua in Hebrew is Yehoshua. The shortened way to say Yehoshua is Yeshua. It's Yeshua. It's you would spell that in English Yeshua. Yeshua. And so in our day and age, many people refer to the Mashiach of the Gospels by the name Jesus. And some people believe that Jesus is how you say Yeshua in English, but it is not. If one was going to translate the name of the Mashiach into English, they would say Joshua. So just want to point that out in case you're wondering. The actual name of the Mashiach, the name by which his mother and father and friends and coworkers and everybody else called him, was Yeshua. Chapter 27. It says, the daughters of Zelophehad, son of Epher, son of Gilead, son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of Manasseh, son of Joseph, drew near. And these are the names of his daughters: Mahalah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Tirzah is married to Shlomo. I'm just kidding. Well, she is, but not this Tirzah. Anyway, and they stood before Moses, before Eleazar the Cohen, and before the leaders and their entire assembly at the entrance to the tent of meeting, saying, our father died in the wilderness, but he was not among the assembly that was gathered against Adonai in the assembly of Korach, but he died of his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the name of the father be omitted from among his family because he had no sons? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. And Moses brought their claim before Adonai. That's the end of the third Aliyah. So let's look at our resources here and look at our insights and see what we should glean, what we can glean from this passage of the text of the God's holy Torah, Baruch Hashem. I want to focus really on this story about the daughters, because there's a lot of good things, obviously, that can be said. There's always good things about the Torah, of course. The Torah is relevant, even when we're reading the seemingly boring parts. When we're reading something that is like, for instance, not everybody gets too excited about the genealogies and things of that nature, but all of those have significant, they have a significant importance. They're very valid, and we can learn from them. The sages teach, and that's true, that if we read something in the Torah and we really don't understand it, we really don't get it, we think it's maybe superfluous or whatever, we should know that it's not, because everything that God does is 100% accurate. Everything that he does is something from which we can learn and grow and glean from, and so on and so forth. So I want to focus today on this last part we read about the daughters of Zelophehad, and bring down some insights from Rabbi Monk and also from the Gutnick Chumash, some thoughts, as it were, related to that. Before I do that, though, I just remembered there was one insight I wanted to share. Yes, here it is. Before I go there, let me just make sure I have everything. Yes, okay. I want to share this insight, just because we're in this time of the 3 weeks, and three things I've said during this time that we should be especially focused upon. Number one, I've said that this is not a time to make any big decisions in your life, right? During the 3 weeks, we're mourning, we're going through a time of praying that Hashem should send the Mashiach and rebuild the third temple. This is not a time to make any big decisions. The other thing I've said is that we should be very, very careful about Lashon Hara, and not just speaking Lashon Hara. That's something that we've got to be careful of course, always, and may Hashem help us with that. The reason, by the way, that the tongue is so difficult to tame, as Yaakov, commonly known as James, said in his letter, is because that was the original sin of the serpent in the garden. He was basically speaking Lashon Hara about Hashem and lying to us. And basically, when we took the bait, we adopted into ourselves that forked tongue, if you will, of the serpent. So it's very difficult. But we also have to be careful about hearing or listening to Lashon Hara. And so this is why I've encouraged people to the extent possible that they should take these 3 weeks and back away from social media. People use social media for good things and for their business and things of that nature, but I'm talking about don't spend as much time as you might otherwise, trolling through it or scrolling through it or whatever you might say. But anyway, I want to share this insight from the Gutnick Chumash here. And the insight is titled "The Motives of a Critic." And I just read this a couple days ago, and I thought maybe it might be good to share. So it says, the tribes appeared to have convincing proof that Pinchas' motives were not pure. So this goes back to Pinchas slaying, becoming a zealot and slaying Zimri and Cosby. And he did this because he was wanted to avenge God's honor, so to speak. He was zealous, and as a result of his zealotry, he actually earned the priesthood. And we said yesterday, this is exactly what Messiah Yeshua did. Messiah Yeshua was not born a priest. He was born a son of David, born a king, but he acquired the priesthood through his merit of who he was. And that's why Yochanan the immerser gave him the mikvah in the Jordan. That's why he went to go see Yochanan, because Yochanan was a son of Aaron and had therefore the legal right to transfer that priesthood to the Messiah. That's why he was mikvahed in the Jordan. It was not the first time he was mikvahed, by the way. Yeshua had gone through the mikvah. At that time, tradition says he was about 30 years old, which means that he would have been mikvahed, at least 20 plus times by that age. And he would have mikvahed many times after that age, or after that moment, rather. There's a precedent for this, by the way, because the sages teach that when Abraham went to Melchizedek to receive the bracha, when Melchizedek blessed Abraham, he says that he transferred the priesthood to him. Why? Because his sons were not worthy. And so therefore he transferred the priesthood to Abraham. And Abraham at that moment was considered already by the sages, by the ancients, as a king. And therefore he became a priest and king. And we find him very shortly thereafter offering up his only begotten son. So there's a precedent for this. But anyway, I digress. The tribes appeared to have convincing proof that Pinchas' motives were not pure. But they were mistaken. It says, this teaches us a powerful lesson whenever we are tempted to find fault with another person's good deeds and question their motives. There is a true statement that if one wants to significantly reduce Lashon Hara in their life, there is one simple practice that will cut out probably 80% of Lashon Hara, and that is judging people favorably, giving people the benefit of the doubt. And very often in Judaism, this example is used. Say you're driving down the street and you see a Yid, a Jewish person, walking out of McDonald's. And normally human nature would say, what in the world is that guy doing McDonald's? Oh my gosh, I can't believe he went in there and he ate the Big Mac. What was he thinking? Probably had a Big Mac and then he had an ice cream. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. That's not what we're supposed to think. We should look at the person and say, you know what? He must have had an emergency. He must have really needed to use the restroom, and there wasn't any other place to go, but to anything else to do, but to go to McDonald's. And so should we judge favorably? Reminds me of a joke. It's a joke I've shared before, but it's funny. So a rabbi is walking down the street. He's walking by a restaurant. It's not a kosher restaurant. He sees one of his Talmudim, one of his members of his shul, walk into the restaurant. He's wondering, I wonder why he's going to the restaurant. So he goes to the window and he sees the man take a seat. He can't believe it. He's got a menu in his hand And then he proceeds to order. The waiter comes over. He places the order. The rabbi's shocked. What's going on? The waiter comes and brings the food. The man eats. And then afterwards, he leaves. The rabbi's, then what's going on? So when the man comes out of the restaurant, he walks up to him. He says, Ari. He goes, oh, hey, Rabbi. He said, what are you doing? Why are you here? Why you come to the restaurant? And he said, did you watch me go into the restaurant? He said, yeah, I saw you go in. You took a seat. You took a menu. He said, did you see me order the food? So I saw you order the food. They came over there. You told them what you want. They went off to the kitchen. He said, did you see them bring me the food? Yeah, you brought it. And only that, they set it right there in front of you. He said, did you see me eat the food? I said, I did. You started eating. I was shocked. And he said, well, the entire thing was under rabbinical supervision, so why are you complaining? Anyway, it says here, one can never know another's true intentions. So long as a person is doing good, he should not be put down or mocked. Even if one has a solid proof that the person is insincere, and in any case, even if it were true and the person indeed had ulterior motives, we have taught always to study Torah and perform mitzvot even for the wrong reason, since in this way one will eventually come to have pure motives. This comes from the Talmud, Pesukim 50b. In other words, we presume that someone is doing something with the improper motive, and even so, as long as they're doing good, we should still judge favorably, assuming that at some point the good that they're doing will eventually lead to the right heart, the right soul. This is like a story that was told by the Rebbe of Chabad, and this led to the campaign that he initiated in, I believe, the late 70s, 78, something like that. The candlelight and the Shabbos candle campaign. And the story goes that there was a young girl who was going to some kind of Jewish school. She had her parents were Jewish, obviously, but they were secular. And so the Rebbe taught, which was back then rather unique, that young girls should be able to light the Sabbath candles from as early as 3 years old, from the point at which they can say the bracha. And so that's a practice today in Judaism that's fairly common. The lady of the house is the principal kindler of light. But if there's other girls in the house, then they should also light candles. But anyway, back then it was not so common. And so this little girl learned about this in school, learned about the Shabbat candles, and she came home and she wanted to light the candles on Friday night. And her mother and her father were like, yeah, we're not religious. We don't want to do all that. But the little girl, who I think at the time was 9 years old, was just persistent. And so the mother said, okay. And so she set up candles on Friday night, and she said, you can light the candles and you can say the bracha. So there's this little girl who walks over to the candles all by herself on Friday night and lights them and puts her hands over her eyes and says the bracha, Baruch atah Adonai. And her mother's just, kind of halfway paying attention. Then after a week or two of this, the mother finds herself lighting the candles with her daughter now because, she's inspired by what her daughter's doing. But the candles are burning on Friday night and they're cooking and the television is on and, that's it. But as the weeks go on, suddenly the TV goes off. A few more weeks go on, the cooking stops. Next thing you know, they are Shomer Shabbos. And the whole point being is that the mother was inspired by the daughter. One mitzvah leads to another, just like one sin leads to another. And maybe she was lighting the candles because she was just doing it because she was trying to make her daughter happy, but eventually it led to her becoming a religious Jew. So it says the lesson is obvious, and it is much wiser to be an activist than a critic, for a little pride can make criticism destructive rather than constructive. But a good deed always remains good regardless of the intention. So The problem with our criticism is so very often it is tainted by pride, and therefore it's not really valid. And we have to be oh so careful. Besides, it's a lot less stressful to not be a critical person. It's a lot less stressful not to be a negative person. It's so much easier and so much more peaceful to be a positive person and to be truly positive. So anyway, as we go back to chapter 27, the daughters of Zelpachad, it says they drew near. And Rabbi Monk brings down, they were motivated to seek justice by their confidence that Adonai's love is not like a father's love. A father may prefer his sons to his daughters, but the Creator loves us all equally. His mercy extends to all of his creatures. I love to point out to people that Judaism is a faith. It's really the first faith system that believed in total equality. Well, I want to preface that. Yes, equality, but not in the sense that the world thinks. Judaism understands that there are roles. There's roles for women and there's roles for men. And yes, we know which bathroom to use. I'm just saying. But it spiritually, in terms of value, the woman is not just treated equally in terms of spiritual and human value, but also is the first religion to confer upon women rights and to confer upon women dignity and honor and to esteem them in certain roles. In fact, many people may not know that in Jewish thought, it's the responsibility of the husband to provide three things for the wife. He has many responsibilities, but these are the three core things of Torah. That he's to provide her shelter, a house. He's to provide her clothing, and Jewish Musar teaches that the husband is supposed to provide his wife clothing to the extent that his budget will allow. So if she wants to go out and buy a new dress, and he wants to buy a new and he's trying to save up his money to buy a new handsaw, then he has to surrender those funds to buy her the dress. I know all the men hate when I say stuff like that, but it's true. And what's also spoken in the Torah, which most people find fascinating, is that it's the husband's responsibility to provide his wife sexual intimacy, not the other way around. In other false religions, it's the woman's responsibility to quote unquote please her man, if you read between the lines there. But in Torah law, it's the other way around, which seems counterintuitive because generally speaking, men seem to be more on that level, but that's the precise point. The Torah is esteeming men. So this whole section here, or esteeming women rather, this whole section here is so beautiful with respect to this. And I love to point this out because Judaism gets libeled and slandered by people that don't know what they're talking about by saying it's a male-dominated role. For instance, men are supposed to read from the Bima. And a lot of times ladies don't understand it. I think it's a male-dominated religion. It's not. It's just that's encouraging men to take up their responsibility because women are naturally more spiritual. And anyway, there's different roles, but everybody's esteemed with great honor. So it says here, and they stood before Moses. This is just a great comment on the proper chain of command. I'm just going to read it right quick. The Midrash teaches that the daughters of Zelpachad did not bring their request directly to Moses. They didn't jump over somebody's head and go right to the big guy. So they originally approached their local leadership of 10. And then when that person wasn't sure, he went up the chain of command. They went then to the leader of 50. The leader of 50 didn't know what to do, so they went to the leader of 100. The leader of 100 wasn't sure, so they went to the leader of 1,000. And when the leader of 1,000 wasn't sure, they took that case to Moses. And that way, it says Moses could have immediately judged the case, but he also wanted to refer to an authority higher than himself. I love this other statement, by the way. So first of all, they followed the proper chain of command. The daughters were not disrespectful. They went to their local leader. The local leader said, I'm not really exactly sure. Let me go up to the chain of command. And that's the proper way to handle things. When you have a problem or a question in the shul, a great way to start is to go to your local leader and ask them. If they don't know, they'll take it to the next level. And so there's another statement here by Rabbi Simon ben Lakish, who was pointing out that Moses knew the law. Like when the daughters brought, it's a very simple case. When the daughters brought the law to Moses, then he knew what he was supposed to say. He understood. He understood what was going to be the outcome. But I love this part. It says, but he deferred to Hashem. Why? So as not to seem prouder than the leaders of 100, than the leaders of 1,000 who deferred to him. Thus, he himself left the judging up to the supreme judge. In other words, he did not want to embarrass the other leaders. He didn't want to make them think, oh, I'm so glad you couldn't answer this case. You brought it to me. Look, I'm so smart. I'll show you. I'll teach you. But rather, he took it to Hashem. And true leadership does that. True leadership is not proud. True leadership is not arrogant. True leadership, it takes the responsibility, the weight of responsible leadership heavily. Then there's also another statement here from Rabbi Monk. This another insight to this point. It says to the verse where it says, "And Moses brought their claim before Adonai." It says this was one of 4 cases in which Moses did this. It says the Midrash declares that the problem with the daughters of Zelophehad was actually a very simple problem. But it was hidden from Moses, and Hashem did this in order to teach him humility. As it says regarding King David. King David was the one who wrote all the Psalms. Brilliant. And yet Hashem told him, by your life, you will one day forget a public law that even a schoolboy knows. Why? To teach you humility. Hashem wanted to make sure that that both Moses and David in this instance were humble, that their power, their authority didn't go to their head. And so he made them forget something just to humble them. And the example used here about King David is when he was going to bring the holy ark up from the house of Abinadab. But David forgot the very well-known law that the ark was supposed to be borne on the shoulders of the Leviim and not on a wagon, which is a fantastic story I've loved to teach on and taught on many times. And as a result, we know that he suffered consequences. Uzziah died and so on. That was from 2 Samuel chapter 6. So another statement here, another insight. It says, as I said earlier, the original sin of the snake in the Garden of Eden was also the sin of speech. And so this is why we have to, we struggle with our speech so much. It says, why should the name of our father be subtracted? This is a great insight as to why Jews make such great attorneys. It says the Midrash expounds upon this phrase to reconstruct the discussion for us. It says the daughters argue that their father should not be at a disadvantage simply because he had no sons. It says if the daughters are not considered offspring equal with the sons, then in effect, Zelophehad died without offspring, and the law of Yivun, that is the Levite marriage, should apply to him. Accordingly, the daughters asked that their mother should marry Zelophehad's brother to continue their father's name and preserve his portion in the land. And Moses replied that the law of Yivun, did not apply because the daughters were indeed valid offspring to continue the father's name. The daughters pressed their point, arguing that in the matter of inheritance, they were treated as though they did not exist. And yet, when it came to the question of their mother remarrying, they were recognized as carrying their father's name. So there was a contradiction here. When it came to the law of Yibun, they were considered valid offspring, and therefore Yibun did not apply. But when it came to inheritance, they were considered not valid offspring, and therefore the inheritance didn't apply. It didn't make any sense. It wasn't legally, it was contradictory. So it was then that Moses decided to defer their case to Hashem. So here are the ladies, and they're arguing the case for equal rights. All right, one last thing. We're out of time for today, but I want to give one last insight. This is really, really phenomenal. We'll have to expand on this at some other point. It says the final nun in the word or the phrase their claim. Their claim is mispatan. That nun is elongated. It's lengthened in the scroll. It says Rabbi Bakia explains that the numerical value of the nun is 50. This lengthened nun is reference to the 50th and highest degree of wisdom, which was refused to Moses as well as to all other human beings. And yet the Messiah is supposed to take us into the final redemption, which is the 50th gate. And yet it says here that no human can reach that level, which must mean, my friends, there's a divine Messiah. End of our Aliyah today. I am glad you joined me today. I hope you have a blessed and fantastic day. With God's help, we'll be back tomorrow to look at the fourth Aliyah and, as always, to glean Hashem's precious insights. I love you all truly. I appreciate you being with me. If you like this video and this teaching, please like it and please share it. That would be a great blessing and a huge help to get the light of Mashiach to all the people who need it. Shalom and blessings. Have a great day.